Ugh, we can't stand them. Welcome to Watch Mojo, and today we're counting down our picks for the top 10 hated movie characters. Before we begin, we publish new content every day, so be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. For this list, we're looking at the cinematic characters that most inspire hatred from audiences. This can be intentional on the part of the filmmakers because the character is a villain, or unintentional due to their actions or personalities. We'll be excluding film characters based on real people though. For the record, we're not saying we hate these characters, but we do understand why people do.
Hey Biff, hey guys, how are you doing?
Yeah, you got my homework finished, McFly?
Well actually I figured since it wasn't due till Monday.
Hello? Hello? Anybody home?
Number 10, Willy Scott, Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. The Indiana Jones franchise has no shortage of annoying sidekicks, and while we were tempted to include Mutt Williams instead, Willy Scott won a spot on our list. A lounge singer who becomes caught up in Indy's adventure, Willy is a far cry from Indy's other love interests.
Oh, quit complaining, this is expensive stuff.
Besides her almost constant need to be rescued, she isn't important to the plot and doesn't bring much wit to the dialogue either. Her most egregious offense, though, is her frequent shrill screaming.
The biggest trouble with her is the noise.
Sure, we don't know how well most of us would hold up under the circumstances she finds herself in, but we can see why people dislike the damage to their eardrums.
Shut up, Willy!
Number 9, Grandpa Joe, Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. Surely not Grandpa Joe? Yes, Grandpa Joe.
As soon as I get my strength back, I'm gonna get out of this bed and help him.
The grandfather of the film's protagonist, Charlie Bucket, Joe at first appears to be a kindly, if rascally grandfather, but he steadily gained a hatedom over the years as people have gone back and really looked at his actions.
It says I can take somebody with me. I wish you could go.
Firstly, the guy is apparently perfectly healthy, yet remains bedridden for years along with his wife and in-laws, rather than help support the family. Then when something fun happens, he jumps at the chance.
Let's take a drink, Charlie. Nobody's watching.
Then in the factory, Joe pushes Charlie into breaking the rules and nearly gets him killed and almost makes him lose the competition. What a role model.
You're a crook. You're a cheat and a swindler.
Number 8, Matilda's family and principal, Matilda. Matilda Wormwood is an incredibly gifted child, possessing a genius-level intellect at a young age and telekinetic powers.
Why would you want to read when you got the television set sitting right in front of you?
However, her parents are incredibly neglectful, not even allowing her to go to school until she's 6 and probably failing to teach her anything at all.
Hey, Dip Face! Have a marshmallow!
Her brother is a dim-witted bully. Meanwhile, when she does go to school, Matilda encounters Miss Trunchbull, her school's tyrannical principal, who frequently abuses students in outlandish ways.
Her sweat and blood went into this cake, and you will not leave this platform until you have consumed the entire confection!
Just watching Matilda have to deal with them for a few hours is enough to make us despise them, so we really feel for the girl growing up with them all.
Have a carrot!
Number 7, Mrs. Carmody, the Mist. Sometimes a crisis brings out the best in people. Mrs. Carmody is at the other end of the spectrum.
Well, if you need a friend, someone to talk to.
I have a friend. God, up above. I talk to him every day.
A religious fundamentalist, Mrs. Carmody is trapped in a supermarket with many others when a supernatural mist full of deadly creatures descends on their town.
I'm sorry, everybody, but this lady's perspective is a little too Old Testament for my taste.
He'll come for you. Maybe tonight when darkness comes.
Rather than rise to the occasion, Mrs. Carmody becomes bitter, spiteful, and is convinced that the mist is divine punishment from God.
Expiation! Expiation!
Some of the panicked survivors become convinced that she's right, joining her in sabotaging the protagonist from leaving, and even attempting to murder some of them. Like God would want.
I don't want that scary lady.
Oh, man, I don't either. But you know what? Maybe she's scared too.
Number 6, Bella Swan, the Twilight franchise. The protagonist of this supernatural romance franchise, Bella Swan is meant to be a relatable every teen who the audience is supposed to get behind, as she engages in a romance with sparkly vampire Edward Cullen. However, many viewers ended up despising Bella.
Is there something wrong with me?
Rather than empathetic, people found her bland. In addition, her attachment to Edward, who's not well loved either, is incredibly unhealthy, as she endangers her own life multiple times just to see him.
I don't want you to come.
You don't want me.
Add in Kristen Stewart's famously stuttering, blink-heavy performance, and you have a recipe for one of the most loathed heroines in movie history. Number 5. Jar Jar Binks, the Star Wars franchise. All we have to do is talk like he dis, and you could guess why Jar Jar is a lightning rod of hate.
How rude.
An amphibious CGI alien, Jar Jar Binks acts as a comic relief character in the Star Wars prequels. Far from making many laugh, he's proved to be one of the most infamous characters in the beloved film franchise, with his immature antics, allegedly racist caricature voice, and inadvertent role in the founding of the Empire, making him a pariah among a notoriously tusty fan base.
When in trouble, Gungans go to sacred place. Mr. Show you. Come on, Mr. Show you.
His voice actor, Ahmed Best, has even experienced depression and considered suicide as a result of his vicious fan backlash.
You know, I hear people say, we're not talking about you, we're talking about Jar Jar. We're talking about me.
Number 4. Percy Wetmore, the Green Mile. A prison guard of death row inmates in 1930s Louisiana, Percy Wetmore is a thoroughly despicable character. Percy is abusive towards the inmates, especially Dell, stepping on his mouse, calling him slurs, and eventually sabotaging his execution to make his death needlessly painful, getting away with it because he's related to the governor. In addition, Percy is, like most bullies, a coward, as he is terrified when one of the more dangerous prisoners stands up to him. John Coffey ultimately sends Percy into a catatonic state for the rest of his life, and we feel little sympathy for the creep. Number 3. Nurse Ratched, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Speaking of awful people in authority over the confined, Nurse Ratched is the head nurse of a mental institution.
If Mr. McMurphy doesn't want to take his medication orally, I'm sure we can arrange that he can have it some other way.
Far from being a caring figure, Ratched is a veritable tyrant, using her position of power over her mentally ill charges to make life simpler for herself, no matter the cost to their well-being.
I don't have to tell her. Your mother and I are old friends, you know that.
Her revoking of privileges and threats against patients ultimately drive one to suicide, prompting protagonist McMurphy to nearly choke her to death, for which she has him lobotomized. Positions of power go to people's heads, and Nurse Ratched is a wretched poster child for abusive authority figures. Number 2. Lex Luthor, Batman vs. Superman, Dawn of Justice. People had a lot of issues with this film, but its version of Lex Luthor is especially hated. The young version of Superman's nemesis is presented as a brilliant mastermind, but rather than intelligent and calculating, Jesse Eisenberg's interpretation seems like a jittery, quirky, pontificating dork whose plans are not so much achieved through planning as plot contrivance.
You think I'll fight him for you?
Yes, I do.
This Luthor has had people pointing out parallels to Heath Ledger's Joker, and while that might seem like a compliment, Eisenberg's performance is nowhere near as charismatic or intimidating.
This is how it all caves in. Civilization on the wane, manners out the window.
Instead, it was all over the place, except where it should have been as Lex Luthor. Before we unveil our top pick, here are a few dishonorable mentions.
What made you think that you could put your hands on my fiancée? Look at me, you filth!
Cal!
What do you think you were doing?
Cal, stop!
What do you think
It was an accident!
Time to get my sexy on with green.
Green? No, green is mine. I call green.
Be my body. Oh, ow!
I got the green.
That hurt, man.
It's supposed to hurt. It's an ass kicking.
And then she met that Potter. And then she had you, and I knew you would be the same. Just as strange, just as
abnormal. And then, if you please, she went and got herself blown up, and we got landed with you.
Mr. Environmental's also a hunter. It's kind of an interesting combination.
I hunt quail, Jeremy. They're overpopulated in this region, and they're decimating the grubworm population. You got a problem with that?
Did anyone order me a plain cheese?
Well, yeah, we did. But if you want any, somebody's gonna have to barf it all up, because it's gone.
Number 1. Dolores Umbridge, the Harry Potter franchise. You know you've got a vile villain when they're more universally hated than the franchise's main antagonist. Dolores Umbridge is a government bureaucrat put in charge of teaching at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, who nearly takes over the entire institution.
Can't do this. Actually, I can.
Petty, two-faced, and cruel, Umbridge does her worst not only to suppress the students' education and sense of joy, but also literally tortures them with her draconian punishments, having it out for the series' eponymous boy wizard in particular.
Because you know, deep down, you deserve to be punished. Don't you, Mr. Potter?
After she's driven out of Hogwarts, she follows it up with falsely imprisoning people for the magic supremacist government run by Voldemort. We'd say she deserves the Dementors, but as Umbridge demonstrates, she's got no soul to suck out.
And one mustn't tell lies.
Stupid! Do you agree with our picks? Check out these other great clips from WatchMojo, and be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.